Good morning, welcome to Morning Review. This is Kim Watson speaking on Wednesday, the 24th of February. Okay, looking at the euro dollar first and just looking at the price action. Yesterday, we put this sort of spinning top pattern in right into the prior highs there. It's in this sort of previous supply zone, which is now providing a bit of support. Still got this untouched 50 MA below, and it's actually, if you notice it, it's just starting to roll over a little bit. As it sort of rolls over, it just suggests it's just catching up with the market effectively and weak, showing a weaker signal. Obviously, we're seeing the 21 rolling over, etc., which is again a bit of a delayed action, but it's really confirming this. We're in the proper downtrend at the moment with the euro. However, we're seeing some consolidation as we've seen yesterday. It's clearly shown on the 4-hourly with this sort of wedge pattern that's going on here. There was some divergence between the lows there, and we've seen the rally come from that. Now, whether we'll see anything more significant, well, we'll have to wait and see this morning. But at the moment, it's very well choppy. I think is probably the best description of these markets in terms of what it's really doing. It's sort of whipping into one direction, pulling back, whipping up, back, up, back, and so on. Now, for the short side, really, I prefer the market to be below this level, and long side, well, simply above this level. So it's quite simple from this point. Now, I'm very aware of that 50 MA is just above what I've drawn there, so would allow that to be the testing point and just look for the position above. Good widening of the moving averages above us, so resistance from that perspective is little, but we if we get past that 50, but obviously looking at horizontal support right into the R1 there at 1.105. Which could provide, I say, support resistance even at the lows. Well, we're not too far. Yesterday's lows, if it starts breaking down towards this S1, so really needs to show its hand, the euro. And as I said, for me, it needs to be starting to move beyond the 50 for me to be looking for the upside. Preference in terms of trading this to the downside because of the lower highs that we've still been seeing coming in. Okay, at the moment we're putting in this wedge pattern, so it's got this sort of higher lows and lower highs coming through a little bit here. So I'd like to see this play out. Generally, we see a bit of action when we see a wedge and a consolidation that we've seen here. So hopefully we'll see a bit of action today. Okay, looking at the pound dollar. So, first thoughts is the downward trend that still sits there. It's not got any support from a daily perspective at the moment, unless it's running back into, and I've got to sort of then come back into sort of the weekly zone to see if there's anything, and there's just nothing. Let's come back to the monthly, and it's only when you come back to the monthly zone that you sort of see the possible monthly. I need to look at this probably in a little bit clearer to look at the weekly support areas, but otherwise we're looking at that 136.36 area and maybe even the 134.90 area, so you can see how much the pound has come off in relative. It's almost back to its 2009 levels, which is probably not that surprising at the moment. Okay, so where to today then? It's a $60 million question. Oh, probably it's a several $1 trillion question. At the moment, it's looking like it's trying to put this bullish candle in, sitting side by side. And on the hourlies, certainly we've got some hammers in there, and we've got the daily pivot above us, so good targets. That daily pivot may again choke. I say again choke. We missed the daily pivot yesterday and the previous day, so the chance is pretty much higher that we'll catch it today. But it may choke it when we hit it, that or the 34 or the 50. We'll see how it runs. But generally, I think it's easy to say it's in a downward trend. The preference is to trade it to the downside. However, we shouldn't ignore this morning's move towards its pivot, and maybe at this sort of point with the 34, or even if it's a bit later with the 50, it could give me the short opportunities. other short possibilities are a little bit limited from how price is shaping up on this time frame, because really we needing to break those lows, and then we're not too far from S2 support, etc. Yesterday's range was relatively mild compared to recently, although it's still probably got some decent pips. Just a quick measure on the break of this level. Still 46 pips down there, but even to the midi there's 20 pips. Now, obviously, there's a low probability of us hitting these pivots, but relatively they're a bit pinched, so we'll see. Okay, that's the cable dollar yen. So again, downward trend. In the main, we are finding support once again this morning off the monthly S3 pivot though, of sorts. It's more it hits this, the more chance it will have of continuing to the south side at this rate. Sorry, just missing something there. If we close as we are on this 4 hourly, we've got bullish engulfing 4 hourly bar. There's no divergence or anything. It was such in there. There was arguably people would argue there was divergence earlier on, but the RSI had almost gone right the way back up to just short of 70. So let's wash that one out. Looking at the hourly perspective, then, well, it's almost there at the daily pivot. I'd be surprised if it didn't catch that, and maybe if it can move up a little bit further up to the 50. There's some bullish sentiment coming out from some of the Fed voters last night, which will soon probably be washed away by other voters. But at the moment, we may see a bit of follow through on the dollar strength, which will obviously push the yen up. Okay, Aussie dollar. So the Aussie dollar, I was hoping for a touch yesterday, that 200. I thought it was a pretty nice target, but it caved in. A divergence came in on the 4 hourly there, shooting star, and eventually broke the lows and it rolled over. Support at the moment into the back into that daily 8 again. It comes back to that and manages to get a bounce quite on regular occasions. Untouched daily pivot above, so there's a possibility of pushing back up towards that sort of figure. We do have plenty of resistance on its route there though, so it may be a testing old time as it whips backwards and forwards a little bit, but certainly got a reasonable probability. And if we see any sort of continue move in the commodity prices, we may see this come through on the Aussie dollar. But for now, with this intermediate change of direction, the divergence is pretty clear from the extremes that we saw in the RSI through to the divergence on the 4 hourly, well, to a degree on the hourly, so you could argue. It's put lower highs in at the moment. Maybe it'll get up there, but it's a weaker case potentially from what we're seeing here. Okay, and finally, the Canadian dollar. Before we do that, let's just have a quick look at what oil's doing, because the association between the two is reasonable. Now, just looking, oil's still heading south again now, back down towards the 31 mark. Let's come back to Canadian dollar and the bigger picture first. And it's been, despite the price in oil flicking around, the dailies are not necessarily showing this quite so much. I've seen a lot more chop on the dailies overall throughout the last, well, mainly through the month actually. It's much choppier. The 4 hourlies, it seems to have got up to this. Probably draw it easier on a daily. It doesn't really matter which draw it on, but there is a sort of trend line that was coming from here through. Didn't quite get up to it previously, but from these highs here, it's run back into it again here. At the moment, it's holding, and well, looking at a shorter time frame, the daily pivots not far below. Had resistance edge. The 200 still facing south though, or heading south, which is the weakest sort of confirmation signal here at the moment, probably. So the downside is the easy route. Broken quite early this morning to the downside, so missed this as a trading opportunity for myself. But maybe other things come with it yet. But certainly going against really what oil's doing at the moment. It's finding its own legs here at the moment, the Canadian dollar. So I think the popularity of it may be just driving it into reacting rather strangely and differently to as it was. Right, that's the Canadian dollar. That's the day. In terms of news today, really significant. No real significant news. There was, as I said, a couple of speakers through the Asian session, Fed speakers. Side of that, very low value news. There's new home sales at 3 o'clock this afternoon in the US. That's a very small mover. Crude oil inventories, maybe we get a little bit of a kicker from that on the oil price and relatively transformed through to the Canadian dollar. We'll see, but nothing of sort of major significance today. So there we go. Hope you have a great one. Bye for now.